In a CNN town hall last night, Elizabeth Warren held up documents that would release women who had previously signed non-disclosure agreements with Michael Bloomberg's company from any and all prior obligations. No word yet on when she might offer a similar release to anyone who donated to her campaign when it seemed like she still had a shot.
Speaking of Elizabeth Warren predicts that Mayor Michael Bloomberg will spend more money to erase everyone's memory of the last debate. In related news, look how pretty the spinning rainbow wheel is in this Michael Bloomberg commercial.
Though. Sorry. I put your jokes back to back, which was a mistake.
Go for it.
Anyway, Bernie Sanders criticized Mike Bloomberg's debate performance in an interview, saying that President Trump would, quote, chew him up and spit him out. To which Bloomberg responded, "Ha! I'm so small I'd get caught in his throat and he'd choke on me. So there."
Though experts disagree, Republican Senator Tom Cotton suggests that the coronavirus was intentionally created in a lab. The question is it the same lab that created Eric Trump?
And finally, President Trump criticized the Academy Awards for awarding Best Picture to the South Korean film Parasite. But when you're Donald Trump, doesn't every movie seem like it's a foreign film? The Trump Report starts now.
I'm Maria Menounos, and you're tuned in to AfterBuzz TV, the ESPN of TV talk. Now, let the buzz begin.
Yes, welcome to the Trump Report brunch time edition.
Yay!
At a special early time on a Friday.
We're all drinking mimosas.
Yes.
Sure, yes.
Go with
of
that little
course.
clink there. And schedules just dictated this. We also wanted to make sure that we got in after the most recent debate. That some people want to call fight night, but it's a little bit more of, I don't know, it's a little bit more of like a slap fight, But we'll get into it. I am, of course, Christian Bladt, returned from Wuhan province. So glad that you're healthy. We did check to make sure you didn't have a fever anymore on the way in. Tamra Brown.
I do have really disgusting warts all over my back, but no coronavirus.
Well, that gives you something in common with Scott Moore.
Yes, exactly.
Who also doesn't have the coronavirus. Welcome. And of course,
And lots of warts on my back.
not
too,
with
so.
us today, Chelsea Galicia. But congratulations. I know she's
Yeah.
watching from Mexico. She is now a Mrs. And I believe the decision was that she already has 2 last names. So I think she didn't want to have 3. So, but congratulations to Chelsea. She'll be back in a few weeks.
Congratulations to Mr. Galicia.
Yes. You know what? If I were him, I think that that's probably the appropriate response. So, you guys watch the debate?
Sure did.
Usually we talk about how boring the debates
Right.
are, and I won't lie, there's one that I actually didn't watch. I won't say which one it was. I did watch a lot of clips afterwards, but we talked about one. It wasn't the night of. It was one that we talked about later, and I'm like, I just can't. So I just read a lot about it. And, usually I watch them, and I'm like, I can't believe it. But this one, yikes! Before we get into any of the specifics, just overall thoughts, Tamra, about that debate and what it says about where the race is at.
Uncomfortable. I did not enjoy watching this one. I mean, not that I really did. Did I enjoy any of them?
No, but I understand. I was trying to talk to a friend about this, and I was telling Tamra this before the show, that to me it's very reminiscent of the British version of The Office, because the pauses and the uncomfortable silences are much longer because the pacing of British television is not as fast. American Office has plenty of that, plenty of uncomfortable, but it's just so long. Just Ricky Gervais sitting there, and I'm like, can somebody say something, please? And there was a lot of that. It was a lot of uncomfortable moments, and I personally, I enjoyed it, but it was incredibly uncomfortable. Scott, what did you think?
Yeah, I was gonna say personally, I enjoyed it too. It felt like a whole different debate. I was like, different people. I'm like, where did these people come from that were so kind of boring and stayed and like you were saying, it's like you'd watch the same debate. You could again and again because they'd be asking the same questions and they became the same talking points, and it was just like, okay, we get it. So why are we having so many debates?
Well,
but this one, it was completely like different people came out.
Here's my hot take. Was this one better because Tom Steyer wasn't there? No.
I'd rather Tom Steyer than Bloomberg present.
I
He
mean,
just has
if-
no razzle dazzle.
If Bloomberg wasn't there, no one would have been entertaining that night. Everyone else only stepped up because of that. And let's get to the greatest hit
But
of the
what was
evening.
interesting about him is everybody else attacking him, not him himself.
No. But if he's not there, they're not going to do it.
Right.
You know?
Exactly.
So Ryan in the booth, the first clip that I would like to share is from the debate. It is Elizabeth Warren. And look, whoever prepared Elizabeth Warren for this debate did a much better job than whomever prepared Mike Bloomberg, because she nailed him on all the things that you need to bring up. And it seemed like nobody thought in his camp that, like, oh, they might ask you about this. You know, he did debate prep, but I guess none of these things came up. Anyway, this is the, I believe this is the moment that where you first realized, like, oh, I can't fall asleep during this
I'm
debate.
going to step out and use the
Let's
restroom.
talk about who we're running against. A billionaire who calls women fat broads and horse-faced lesbians. And no, I'm not talking about Donald Trump. I'm talking about Mayor Bloomberg. I'd like to
Burn! And yeah, that's just we have the snippet version of that, but the audience was like, you had some ooh, like you had the Jerry Springer ooh, but then also there was like, I think there was a little bit more of that. People were not expecting that. You know who was expecting it the least? Michael Bloomberg. He's
Apparently.
like, what now? What? Who did I? What? So, Tamra, that made you uncomfortable.
It made me uncomfortable. I don't like that. I also obviously didn't like the Mayor Pete going on Klobuchar about how important it was to remember the Mexican president's
all right,
name.
I guess now we do have to get
And-
to the third clip, because the third clip is Amy Klobuchar not knowing who the president of Mexico is.
Oh, you've got the actual original.
So here's why that's important before we play it. She's running for president. She's been in the Senate. She used the word arena 40 times in the debate. I'm in the arena. I'm in the arena. If you're in the arena, you should know who the president of Mexico is. And look, you might forget, but if you're sitting down with Telemundo, you lean into an aide, you ask Siri, who's the president of Mexico? Because it might come up. And that's why it's such a big deal to me, is because, one, she couldn't bullshit her way out of it, and she tried. She's no Donald Trump when it comes to that.
Right.
You know, he would have had the Telemundo reporter crying or possibly put in a cage.
You mean bullshit her way out on
Out
the
not
debate?
knowing.
At the debate?
No. In the interview,
yeah.
she couldn't talk her way out of it.
Let's see it. I've never seen the clip.
Oh,
before.
well. If you thought that the debate was uncomfortable, Ryan, let's play this.
Yes. What do you know about the Mexican president?
Okay, well, what I will tell you is that I will visit Mexico in the first 100 years. 100 days.
100 days.
I will
you
visit.
Nobody's even talking about
running
that.
for president.
Yes.
You would like to be the
Yes.
Democratic candidate.
Yeah.
What do you know about the Mexican president now?
Well, I know that he is elected in the last few years. I don't know him personally. I've met with the ambassador, and I was actually supportive of the trade agreement. So I worked with the embassy on that. They came to meet with me.
And I ask because it's so important, especially Nevada, California, Arizona, Texas. This is our neighbor to the south.
Yeah.
Do you know anything about him? Specifically his politics, what he's doing, since this would be the country you would share a border with? Anything
well,
you can tell me about him?
I know that they are neighbors, and regardless of who the leader is, that it is someone that I will work with.
They are our neighbors. You're right.
Do you know who he is? Do you know his name?
Yeah. I know that he is the Mexican president.
And for those listening on audio, she did look off camera.
Yeah.
Don't you think it would be important if you're running for president to know who the president of Mexico, the country to the south of the United States, is?
Yeah.
Yes.
Because it affects so many Americans. Mexican Americans are the largest Hispanic, the largest number of Hispanics in the U.S. are Mexican Americans.
Of course it is. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's not a good job. That is the takeaway there. What does she know about Mexico? It's our neighbor to the south, and only because the reporter asked that. And again, I think. Yeah, does Donald Trump know the president of Mexico?
Nope.
He's been our president for 3 years. I don't think he does. I think that maybe
Do any of us, by the
But
way?
here's the thing: we're not running for president, and Tom Steyer also didn't know. But come on, what is he?
Right.
He's a billionaire. He doesn't need to know anything.
Right.
You know what I mean? It's fine. I'm sure Bloomberg doesn't know either. Mayor Pete did know. We don't need to show the clip, but he's a little bit of a show off too, because when he knows, he like overpronounces the accent.
Sure.
He'll answer in Spanish, like all right, we got orador. It's like, all right, we get it, Mayor Pete. You're smarter than me. All right, but so that's why to me it was a big deal. Was because it's more about prep. The not knowing, that's fine, but not being able to talk your way out of it. But also, if that was, well, I was gonna say any other media outlet, but I guess Univision being the one other one that. But if it was NBC, CBS, whatever, and then they got it, and like, oh, they're being dicks. But I can see that Telemundo's like, how much do you really know about us? And bad luck for Tom Steyer that hadn't gone viral yet, and then he got asked the same question. I think so. Anyway, that's sort of a long meandering way to get to the point that's why I think it was important. And she also did not have good responses for Mayor Pete. This was very like schoolyard. Oh, I'm sorry, we can't all be perfect like you, Pete.
Yes.
Like, ouch.
Well,
Are you
that's-
calling me stupid? No, but that was a stupid moment. I mean, that's a fine response that he did not give, but you could have said that.
What it felt like to me is that it's not a matter of anyone actually checking why somebody shouldn't be president. It's more about he took that opportunity in that specific moment because that was his opportunity to appeal to, I guess, Latino voters. Like they're looking at there's one strand of why I have to make this attack at this time right now. Like it wasn't for the general, like, showing that Klobuchar maybe isn't a qualified candidate or anything like that.
Yeah.
I don't think.
No, I mean, I think the fact that she tells the joke about the snowstorm and Donald Trump's hair 40 times on the there's a great montage that the Daily Show did where they show every time she said it, and she said it again last Friday on Bill Maher's show.
Yes, she did.
And it's just like, if you have a good line that's actually funny, sure, you can trot it out, but it was never funny. And so she's just somebody that comes off like, okay, well, she talks about being in the arena. I guess she's been in there so long that she has a little relatability problem. One of the people that I follow on Twitter is a campaign strategist, Mike Murphy, who people know in California probably for helping get Arnold Schwarzenegger elected. Despite that, he's a great guy. I like him. I've known him for a long time. And he said that in this debate, you started to see the Amy Klobuchar that people who had worked for her previously were talking about, over the recent months. Just getting angry, being mean, and not particularly quick on her feet. But her performance was so far from the worst in the debate. She was not the second worst. She maybe was the third worst, but I don't think so. Because far worse than her, for me, is Joe Biden. But I wanted to talk a little bit more about Klobuchar. Scott, your just overall thoughts on her and how, look, she did well in both Iowa and New Hampshire, right?
She did.
Yeah. So,
well, I mean, voting wise, not as well in Iowa, and
right.
and there was I was surprised, as we talked about last week, that she didn't do better being the neighbor, but that's not as big a deal as it used to be. I know she didn't get to campaign as much at the end there because of the impeachment trial.
Sure.
But there's two things to it. One is it goes beyond her not knowing the president's name, because I did like the fact that Elizabeth Warren kind of defended her in the debate and said, look, people forget names all the time when it seemed like she was having a bad day when she said 100 years instead of 100 days. So she was already off kilter, it seemed, and she seemed very nervous and uncomfortable in this. But the problem was, like you said, she didn't know the basic facts about it. She didn't know, that Obrador is a leftist, that, he was the first leftist that won by a landslide in Mexico in years. Like basic things that she should have known, and knowing what his policies are that differentiated from his predecessor. And that's more of a concern than the fact of forgetting someone's name.
Yeah.
Two, I would say in the debate that Pete had to go for the jugular in this debate, as everyone else was, because the fact that they're both in that moderate lane, and he saw that she had a very good showing in New Hampshire, and it was beyond trying to go after the Latino vote, which did seem pandering when he goes into Spanish and everything. But, obviously they're in Nevada, and that is a huge Latino vote, and so he is trying to track some of those, of course. But I think he's also going after that moderate lane to try to sew that up.
Do you think when he's in South
Klobuchar.
Carolina next week, he's going to have a little bit of a drawl? Do you think he's going to... What do you think the odds are that Pete Buttigieg says y'all at some point in that debate? I just thought of this now. I think the odds are pretty good, right?
It's just like Elizabeth Warren, like, you know, the beer drinking with the husband. It's like, just be yourself. And
yeah.
So I think he was trying to make sure he saw, like, look, she's not prepared for primetime here. I am, you know, because she went on to say how she had the experience and had won statewide, and he lost statewide in Indiana, and so there was a lot of back and forth, but he was going for the jugular. He's at the point now where he needs to get her out of his lane there if he has a chance to be able to consolidate that moderate middle lane.
I mean, let's be honest, they're both probably gone a month from now.
Yeah,
you know?
exactly.
And so I can see, like, you know, he's got to push all the chips in right now, and this is really the time. I mean, you know, they both need to have a win somewhere on Super Tuesday, and if they don't, it'll be a quiet Wednesday.
Yes, it will be. But for him especially, he had to really go. Even though I didn't enjoy that and I thought it was awkward and uncomfortable, I think at this point in the game he had to go for it because of the fact that she
had to play dirty.
And she had a terrible night compared to before New Hampshire, which a lot of people, which we talked about, voted at the last minute for her because she had such a great performance, and she didn't do herself any favors in this last debate, which is not going to help her.
And it was uncomfortable when she was asked the question about her prosecution record.
Yep. Yeah.
That was an uncomfortable moment,
yes, it was.
too. And
she didn't answer it well either. Again, it was like she wasn't able to answer it well.
Yeah, she did say, she sort of veered it towards, I also, when the police of that county wanted to keep something about the records of police violence within their own department, she said she was against that, so she diverted it sort of, but it was still, what was the question? Do you remember?
I don't remember exactly what it was.
It was, it was the particular case that she was involved in.
It was something about police targeting minorities in her
particular
county.
Yeah, but I mean, I think that the main takeaway is that it was not. She didn't negotiate any of these things particularly well. Any of the adversity that came up, and you know, I mean, even Elizabeth Warren standing up for her, like you mentioned, it was at point. It's like, yeah, she didn't know his name, but she didn't really know anything about him. And she's like, and then so Warren's like, oh, okay, well.
But questions like that by the moderators, like that's also what made this debate. Like, I felt like the moderators were also aiming more towards the jugular than just general questions about the environment and international policies and things like that.
I mean, Chuck Todd just wants to make sure that nobody realizes what an odd-looking human he is. So it's like immediately take the focus off of him. I get it completely. I mean, I thought that the moderators were okay in this debate. It was really like that last CNN one where, you know, Bernie's like, so I didn't say it. And then she says, so when Bernie said it, I'm like, no, that really bothers me. When it's like, okay, so you as the moderator shouldn't call somebody on stage a liar. You can let everybody else do it.
Let everyone else.
But it was hard to stay out of the way. I mean, poor Lester Holt, you know. He's just like, what am I doing? Like, can I go home now? You know?
Isn't there a Dateline on that I have to announce?
It's like, man, you know, if Brian Williams hadn't made up so many stories, I wouldn't be here right now. He would. That would have been fine. So anyway, let's go back to Joe Biden for a second, because old Uncle Joe, who spent 2019 the whole year, really. I mean, once he got in the race, he was the front runner.
Yeah.
2020 has not been so kind to him, and there was a lot of Joe Biden jumping in, and me too, and not the kind of me too we usually talk about. Like when Elizabeth Warren is like, you should release these women from it, and from the NDAs, and Joe Biden immediately is like, yeah, look, it's simple. All you have to do, it's like, okay, she literally just said it. I know you're older, you maybe didn't hear her, but it doesn't help.
Also, when you're talking about, you know, sexual harassment, like, don't mansplain over the woman talking about.
That's right, Toots. Let me tell you.
Yeah.
No, exactly. I mean, but apart from a couple of those moments, it was like he was, you know, he was marble mouthed. He was confused, and you know, it's. I think, yes, it looks bad for Bloomberg. Of course, he had a terrible night. But he's not on the ballot in Nevada. No one was going to caucus for it. So people can write in for him. But this is great. this was dress rehearsal for him, and now he's like, oh, all right, I'm gonna have to borrow somebody who has big boy pants and see if I can get those hemmed and cinched, and then I'll put them on, and then I'll be ready for South Carolina, because I think Joe Biden was the most hurt by this, because it's like, you know, I've had the Nevada caucus in particular is the one that I've known someone that's done, and they told me a lot about it. And I think they all work kind of the same way. You're sitting in a room, you know, probably as nicely decorated as this one, with some brick wall and some, you know, cups with free water. And you're trying to convince people, like, well, I like Mayor Pete, and here's why. And then you just try to convince them. And then conversationally, you might get people to change their vote, and then you put it in that way. Instead of, you know, the way everybody else does it, where you just put a little check next to a name, and it goes on a screen or on some paper, and then they count them. So, yeah, I don't think Bloomberg had to really worry about that, you know.
And the fact that he had ads blanketing that debate the whole night too. Like,
yeah,
oh
there would go. There go his ads on commercials.
God.
Yeah, he always has ads. I did like his moment that made me laugh. I think unintentionally on his part was, well, you can also follow me, but you don't need to send me any money.
Yes.
You know, we're talking about Bloomberg ads, Ryan, and that's the third thing that I have, which. You know, it's a little bit not playing fair, but he does, you know, look, he's got literally unlimited resources.
Where did his wealth come from?
He did not inherit it. He made it through business. I mean, haven't you seen the ads? I can tell you all about when he was born. I've seen a picture of him as a Boy Scout.
I actually haven't.
Yeah.
I see Steyer ads all the time. I don't ever
I
see
Bloomberg those way
Bloomberg
more
ads.
often, actually.
Yeah.
I do see more. Yeah. But yeah, and so he made his own fortune. And we'll talk about wealth and those things. But so he has all this money. He has people that are making good memes for him. I think his tweets at Donald Trump leave a lot to be desired. But the memes are doing good. And then you have an ad like this one, Ryan, if we could play at least some of it.
The best way to predict the future is to create it. I don't know anybody I've worked with in my career, and I've been hanging around a long time, who does more to create the future than you, Mike.
Mike Bloomberg. That's Joe Biden speaking, for those listening
the
on
city
audio.
of New York into a global leader on public health and environmental stewardship.
And it's, again, for those not watching, there's these images, inspirational-looking images of Mike Bloomberg as a leader.
Gas emissions by 16%.
And there's Biden,
Mike
still going.
Has what every public official should have: passion, matched with principle. Your legacy extends well beyond the 5 boroughs to a nation and a world that continues to benefit from the leadership that.
Anyway, we can fade down on it. So basically, this is like, so Joe Biden got out of the race.
The score to Braveheart that plays underneath
and it's like, so Biden's out of the race, and he's supporting Bloomberg, and it's so great. Because again, it's not playing fair. But look, we're gonna see way worse ads than that. To me, that's just funny. These are Biden's words. They didn't pretend. You know, it's not like, I am a big fan of Michael Bloomberg. It's not that. So you know, look, he's got a great team around him. And to be fair, when asked about this, Joe Biden said, I don't endorse Republicans. So all right, that's not too bad. Give Uncle Joe a C- on that. All right. Look, he needs something. But what do we think collectively? I'll ask you first, Tamra, about Uncle Joe, where he's at, like not in that ad from 10 years ago or whatever, but actually today as he's hustling in South Carolina.
Well, how's he doing? I guess through the debate, I'd say he sort of coasted, to me, the same way Bernie did. Like there was nothing, aside from not being super participatory in the debate, there wasn't anything that made him really, there was no embarrassing moment or anything like that.
Yeah, his teeth stayed in his mouth.
Yeah, there was no like attack on him.
Well, and that's the thing too, because he's not a threat anymore. Obviously, past debates they went after him, but now it's like, oh, we can't do that. That would be elder abuse to kick poor Uncle Joe.
Yeah, and so I guess where he is in the polls. So I don't know. I'm actually super surprised that. I think we all are, right? That he.
I thought he would be
not-
doing better at this
Yeah.
point. I don't know that he was definitely going to get the nomination. I think when he announced, I'm like, well, that's the guy that makes sense.
Yeah, I thought.
But I really thought he'd be doing better than this. What do you think, Scott?
I'm kind of in the middle. I was surprised by how durable he was doing last year. I mean, I get before most people were paying attention, but it was very surprising when he had a bunch of stumbles in the earlier debates, and that he still was having this very durable lead. But I'm surprised this year that he's fallen so quickly. But I felt like in this debate, he felt very irrelevant to me. He felt like he was just a background, like you were saying, Christian, just chiming in here and there, making comments, but he just felt like this older, sort of out of place guy. And it is sad because we've talked about this before, but it seemed like he had his peak and he had his opportunity, and it probably would have been 2016. And now he's sort of past his prime, and as great as he has with his legacy and things that he's done, I mean, it's not perfect, of course, but that's also part of the problem when you see ads like that. When you have people that have been in politics so long, you know, they have such a record that goes back 45 years, things change, and you get people on the record saying a lot of different things that may have changed now. But he just, he felt like he's past his prime, and it kind of just felt sad, like seeing him on stage, because he still was not very coherent. He didn't have anything, like you're saying, like Tamra, he didn't have anything that was really memorable. He just kind of got through it, but it just felt like he was like sort of a has-been that was just there sort of in the background and a little more irrelevant. I don't think it's really going to help him as he moves forward. It looks like he's still leading in South Carolina, but that lead continues to narrow, so it's going to be interesting to see when they have a week away from...
In general, are polls still, like, Bernie's leading most
Most
right?
polls, yeah.
And then second is, like, Mayor Pete?
It's different in each state.
Yeah,
That's
exactly.
the thing. It's really kind of crazy. Like, which is, I guess I've never thought about how ads really do if they're blanketed make a difference, because you see Steyer's doing really well in South Carolina, and he's been blanketing ads down there, and he's getting a lot of the African American vote that was going to Biden because he's really been targeting that community. And then you go down to Florida and you see Michael Bloomberg is actually about neck and neck with Joe Biden now in Florida. And Bernie Sanders. So it's really interesting because he's been blanketing ads in Florida because their primary is not until March 17th. So it's really fascinating that each state is a little bit different right now on who's kind of in the middle of the pack there.
And look, for people who really spend a lot of time following this stuff and are, political nerds and interested in it, you see all these debates. Bloomberg could have as bad a night in the next 5 debates. It might not make an impact because of all the commercials that he's buying. And way more people are going to see those commercials before they go to vote. Be like, you want to spend 2 hours of prime time watching a bunch of, everybody except Mayor Pete, as he pointed out, everybody on stage who's a millionaire except Mayor Pete. It's not necessarily where everybody wants to spend their time.
Well, and I would say, too, if you really, and I was tweeting about this, too, is the fact is if you went on debate performance alone for electability, then Donald Trump would have lost by a landslide because he did not do well in any of the debates, even though he claims he did the best ever. He did horribly. And he had a couple, even in the Republican thing, he would do stupid things and make comments and that rile people up. But when he was actually one-on-one with Hillary Clinton, he was terrible in all of them. So debate performance does not necessarily equal, how people are going to vote.
He was terrible to people who know about policy and politics, to the people who are watching and his supportive base who just want to see him say, yeah, but that was about Rosie O'Donnell. That's what they want. That's what they want to hear. So to them, he did fantastic.
When it's like someone who calls women fat pigs, and then he interrupts, and he says, "Only Rosie O'Donnell."
Yeah, like that's the sick burn that his base wanted to.
But I did laugh when he said that.
No, but that's what I'm saying. Like, he's not a good debater, and you could say the same thing. Like, to me, Michael Bloomberg is like the more boring version of Donald Trump on the Democratic side right now.
You're like way more boring,
but. Debates don't necessarily equal into how people are going to vote, which is, even though he had an absolutely horrible night, and I think it woke up a lot of people that might have been interested in looking at him as the moderate with some of his issues, it's not going to come down to who's going to end up, how his votes are going to end up being. And it's sad to say in some degree, but yeah. So if he's got unlimited resources, he can throw up ads like this with Joe Biden.
Yeah.
And the other ad with him with Obama on every single channel all the time, trying to make it look like they're best friends and everything. So, I've literally seen people post that they were voting because they were like, oh, I didn't realize that Obama is endorsing him. And, people see those ads and they actually think Obama's endorsing Michael Bloomberg because of those ads. So it is kind of crazy how it really does affect people's ideas on ideals on a candidate, which I didn't think it would ever would.
I have a dumb question. When do candidates announce their running mate? Is it not until the nominee is
usually
announced, or?
you can sometimes throw a Hail Mary, like Ted Cruz announced that Carly Fiorina was going to be his running mate when he was so far off from, it's just, you're just trying to create some buzz. Usually it's at least very likely you're going to be the nominee. Now, that does sort of bring us to a situation that we could very well get to, which is that nobody hits the right number for the delegate count. And interestingly enough, Bernie Sanders has a different view on this than he did 4 years ago. Because 4 years ago, he seemed like the guy who was going to get the delegate count and not have more votes. I think I have that right. And then this year, it's the other way.
No,
yeah,
he was not going to have the delegate count in 2016.
Yeah, and then this year he's like, well, I think I'm going to get the delegates, so let's go with that. So he's completely got. And look, obviously opinions change, and so does your circumstances. But and I think that's the sort of thing that, depending on how close those delegate counts are, if somebody does pick. Look, sure, somebody'd love to have Michelle Obama as their running mate. That's not going to happen. But if you pick somebody that you like, I remember them from earlier in the race. Like, I don't know that you get a huge bump from like a Kamala Harris, but somebody that people are like, I did like a lot of what they said. So maybe you are a little bit more interested. You're like, I'm kind of teetering between these two people. I like their running mate more. But yeah, I don't think you'll get it until close to the convention.
Because I feel like once a running mate of any candidate is announced, like that's the only potential at this point, that because there's no single candidate that anybody is super excited about. I mean, even Camp Bernie, Team Warren, like I don't know, maybe I'm wrong, but I feel like there's just not like there's clearly not the clear front runner. So I feel like once a running mate could potentially be announced, if Bernie selects somebody, I feel like who I would just be like, hell yeah, that's suddenly fired up about it.
What if he picked like Elizabeth Warren?
That's what I'm thinking.
Yeah,
if the two of them teamed up, I feel like that's clear.
I think that's what she's thinking, because she knows she's not going to get the
She's
nomination.
she's not attacking him directly. That was something I noticed too in the debate. But look, like you said, normally they don't do it until after until you get closer to the summer and everyone knows what's happening, and you pick somebody. And
we'll have a really good idea a month from now, but it can still be close throughout April.
So like when Biden announces that Hillary is his running mate,
that's well, see, if he did that now, then all of a sudden it'd be like, okay, I guess I might have to vote for Uncle Joe. But broker convention, no clear winner. Hillary definitely swoops in, is like, you know what? Let me take care of this for you. I got 3 million more votes last time. I'll get 5 million more votes this time.
And still lose.
Well, yeah, that's actually what I meant. But just think about how much that would annoy Trump if twice he won the Electoral College but lost the popular vote.
And that's probably what would happen anyways. If he was to win, it's going to be he lost the popular vote, but
Hey, is there an age? You have to be 35 to be president. What about to be vice president?
No.
Is there,
I do think actually it's also 35.
Do you know what I'm about to ask?
Because you might become president.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. That's so. I guess so. I was about to say, could Bernie select AOC as his running mate?
No, but when Beto runs in 4 years, he can. That's just a little joke. Just wanted to mention somebody. So we do. Unfortunately, we only have a few minutes, but I do want to talk about Bernie Sanders and the fact that he, right now, is the front runner. And my very strong feeling about this: if Bernie Sanders is the Democratic Party's front runner, then Donald Trump is the front runner to be reelected so far and away, because it is the easiest case for him to make. Do you feel like things are going well right now? Do you like having some money? This guy wants to take all of it. It doesn't matter if that's true or not. You had people. You had Mike Bloomberg calling him a communist. That's it's hard to disprove. And I said this last week, and I know it's
reaction. And I know it's the word communism.
Yeah, but meanwhile, it's like, didn't he honeymoon in Russia? Sorry, didn't he honeymoon in the Soviet Union? It wasn't just Russia. So look, that's very circumstantial and probably unfair. But boy, is that an easy. I feel like I could do that debate prep on Bernie Sanders as a communist. It's not great, and I don't think people like to hear. Look, I don't have that much money. I didn't grow up with a lot. But I don't like the idea that somebody like Jeff Bezos or Mike Bloomberg shouldn't exist. They can have all that money. I think they should be taxed at a very high rate. But I don't think the idea like that, and I don't think these candidates say it, but you'll hear supporters say it and surrogates say that like these people shouldn't exist. They shouldn't have all that money. No.
Well, Bernie Sanders has basically said that.
Yeah,
he doesn't believe in billionaires.
That's the thing is, he says it, and it's like, and by the way, Bernie's a millionaire, but it's a light millionaire. He's got $2 million, all right, and he's got 3 houses, but one of them's in Vermont. So, don't act like, he's really, but it is tough to be the man of the people when you are literally a millionaire.
Right.
But he just doesn't like billionaires because his friends are millionaires.
I was going to say he's a millionaire, so you can't say he doesn't like millionaires. But, and the fact that he's been in government for so many years too. I would hate to say that because we saw what happened with Donald Trump in 2016. I would hate to say that he's automatically discounted from winning and that I think Trump would be a favorite. However, I would not put it past the fact that if Sanders got the voter turnout and got a few of the states that he needed, because again, Trump barely won.
No, I know. It's
so
the electoral count for Trump is very misleading.
Yes.
It's those like, 47.4 versus, 47.8 or whatever, percent of the vote. Like those razor thin margins that it's not that hard to tip those the other way. Like Bernie Sanders very easily can win a state like Pennsylvania. Like that's just off the top of my head.
Right.
Totally. Like I think okay, anybody except Tom Steyer. I think any of those people on the stage, even Joe Biden could win Pennsylvania.
Joe Biden would definitely win because he's from that.
That might be the only state that Joe Biden could win. I mean, Delaware, but come on.
Yeah.
They have like a half an electoral vote. Just kidding, Delaware, if you're out there. But, and I think...
Ryan's not going to be happy hearing that.
We don't want to upset our Delaware fans.
I know. That's why I said it. Yeah. But he's getting ready to talk about Sonic the Hedgehog in a few minutes over on the Popcorn Talk. So I get it. But in any case, I think that, it's very dangerous what Bernie Sanders is saying as a Democrat. If you are a Democratic socialist or, even a communist, what he says, you're like, a lot of that sounds great. And I think that, Elizabeth Warren is a little bit more, it's a much more appetizing version of that. I am surprised that Bernie is so far ahead, but he's the only person that engenders any kind of passion in his supporters.
Yeah, that's what we talk about. He's basically the Trump on the far left. And
Chelsea got so mad at me the first time I said it.
But it's true, and I've said that to her too.
Yeah.
It's you kind of go on the extreme, but they're basically one side of each coin here. But the thing is too is that he's got that whole side to himself right now, and then you have everyone else sort of battling. Elizabeth Warren is closer to him, but still trying to get those moderate votes, and you have everyone else lumped in the moderate side. So they're all fighting for that same, which we talked about last week. If you were to take out a couple of those candidates, the moderate votes won widely in New Hampshire.
Yeah,
widely. So the fact is he's off on his own, and that's the thing is that he's getting all the votes from the passionate supporters, the young people. You have a lot of Latino voters, African-American voters, people that feel like, again, sort of like the Trump voters that have been left behind. Even in this economy, they feel, it's been stacked against them. And so his message to them seems very, very appetizing, like you're saying. So there is a passion there like Trump voters, and they will stay with him no matter what. And he's off by himself right now. So that's why he's able to kind of take away these numbers, which he couldn't do before when it was between him and one other candidate with Hillary Clinton last time.
It's a comparison that Sanders supporters also wouldn't like, but, fans of Rush Limbaugh, they've always been ditto heads because everything he says, they believe. And as somebody who worked in talk radio, when you're not someone that everyone can agree with, it's really hard to sell your show. That works for his show. That's the Trump people, those are ditto heads. And I think the Bernie people are like, whatever he says is fine because they like him so much. And you don't have that for anyone else on that stage where you like everything that they say.
Right.
Before we run out of time, Tamra, just more of like a general thought, Bernie, and sort of what maybe even a prediction, what you think we might see over the next couple weeks.
Oh, boy. Over the next couple weeks, let's see. Well, Bloomberg... Never mind. I was about to say, Bloomberg's he's out, but that's not going to happen.
No, oh my
He's going to keep paying his way off.
He's got $6 billion. Like he's got so much more money than Donald Trump.
He's actually a real billionaire.
Yeah, he's a real billionaire.
He's the Olivia Jade and the Democratic presidential is USC.
Oh, I like that.
Paying his way in.
I hope that's a tweet that you have sent out or will.
What is my prediction? Gosh, I
It's
just
too hard.
just don't know. Yeah, it's
I think that Tuesday night's debate will be interesting in South Carolina, and because there is a debate on Tuesday night, we'll be back on Wednesday at our usual time, 4:00 Pacific, 7 Eastern, but just on a different day. And then the week after that is Super Tuesday, so we'll be here that night. One of these days, we're going to get back on our regular schedule, but it's really hard, actually. This calendar. Look, if AfterBuzz were open on Saturdays, I'd be like, we should probably do something after the Nevada caucus.
Yep.
But we'll talk about that and the South Carolina debate. But we're out of time for now. Obviously, it's always fun to chat with everyone. Thanks to everybody who tuned in on a weird day and a weird time. But Scott Moore, where can people find you?
Find me at SMan80 on the Twitter, and making fun of Donald Trump.
And Tamra Brown
on Twitter. Hey Tamra _.
And you can find me on Twitter and Instagram at ChristianDMZ, and all across AfterBuzz TV with shows like Curb Your Enthusiasm, Star Trek Picard, and of course this one. So that's all the time we have for now, but we will see you, as I said, next Wednesday at 4 Pacific. Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Our founder, Keven Undergaro, and me, Maria Menounos, would like to thank you for tuning in to AfterBuzz TV. Remember, we're not just the first, we're the biggest in the world, and we're the only destination for all your favorite TV shows. Whatever you crave, we've got it. So go to AfterBuzzTV.com and check out our lineup. Buzz you later.
The views expressed herein are those of the hosts only and do not necessarily reflect the views of AfterBuzz TV or its owners or principals.